Welcome to Stop the Fight, episode 22. And today, as always, we are talking about this weekend's action. Let's go!
Don't brag about taking my side piece! Don't brag about taking my side piece, though!
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
He's strong, man. Good boy, just...
All right, given that it's a Thursday, let's talk about a Thursday fight. One that's actually, the card is actually going on right now, and it's in Russia. It's the Murat Gassiev versus Michael Wallische fight. Now, Gassiev, let's really talk about him. I know you guys have known about him because he fought Usyk. Now, he is the 27-1 with 20 knockout heavyweight now. He was a cruiserweight champion who met Usyk in the finals of the World Super Series boxing thing they had on the Zone, which is similar to the Super 6 from 10 years ago, at cruiserweight. They had one at 140 pounds. That's how Josh Taylor wound up beating Prograis. Well, over here, you had Usyk versus Gassiev in Moscow. And Gassiev was kind of defeated quite easily. Very wide decision loss to Usyk at cruiserweight. And so here he is. He's moved up to heavyweight. And he's already had a fight over here. Now, Usyk is he's like a counterpuncher, right? Very strong kind of guy. Looks for an opening, likes to land clean shots. And he recently, like I said, had a fight at heavyweight against Nuri Safari, who he knocked out in the first round. Again, I don't know much about Michael Wallische. I know Michael Wallische is 22-4 with 15 wins by knockout. All 4 defeats by knockout. Now, it seems like every single time he stepped up, he's lost by knockout. Christian Hammer, Ajab Yoka, and Joyce all defeated him by knockout. So it's going to be interesting to see. Like I said, I don't know anything about him, but I do want to see how Gassiev looks because I think he's just a little bit too small for heavyweight. He's at that perfect cruiserweight size, but not big enough to challenge the supers at heavyweight. He's 6'3.5". So again, we saw Usyk clearly outbox Gassiev. So again, that's that. Now let's talk about, again, I'll mention what happens later in the podcast, if the fight is over or if it begins or whatnot. But we'll see how it's going. I have it open on the side tab. It's running on the Ushatyaka YouTube channel, and it's, I guess, free for everyone to see. So, but this weekend, what do we have? We have Joyce. He's back, and he's fighting Carlos Takam. Now, that's a fight. That's a good fight, especially for a comeback fight for Joyce, who had a real, legit kind of test and fight against Daniel Dubois, right, in his previous fight. He wound up beating Dubois by knockout, by stoppage. Dubois' eye wound up getting shot and closed after an accumulation of damage. And now that was a fight I think many people were picking Dubois to win. Many people were, and I see why. Joyce is old. Well, I mean, old. He's 35. But for a guy who's still kind of like an up-and-comer, that's old. By 35, people are wrapping up their careers. Not still in that prospect phase, but, everyone moves at a different pace. Everyone gets the sport at a different time. And so you had Daniel Dubois, who was 15-0 at the time, going up against the 11-0 at the time, Joyce. And many people thought, well, Joyce is just a little too slow. And he does look at points like extraordinarily slow, snail pace fighting. But he did put it on Dubois. He took Dubois' power shots. He withstood him. He's a big kid. He's 6'6", and he's nicknamed the Juggernaut, and that actually works for Joyce. This boy is big kid. So he's kind of getting, like, after a rough kind of fight like that at the end of last year, he's now getting Carlos Takam. Now, Takam, from about 6-7 years ago, was a very legit top 10 heavy. He's a Cameroonian who's 39-5 and 1 draw, 20 wins by knockout, 3 defeats by way of knockout. And his first notable loss, he lost early on in his career in 2009, but his first notable loss where Takam was up and coming and he had defeated Grant and drew with Mikey Perez, so you saw already oh shit, this guy's the real deal, was against Povetkin. And he wound up having a hell of a fight against Povetkin. Just a hell of a fight. You guys have to go watch it. First of all, it's an amazing back and forth battle. And eventually, Takam goes down twice in the end of the fight. And eventually Povetkin lands an amazing left hook to put Takam out for good. Takam would later go on and beat Michael Sprout and have a very spirited fight with Joseph Parker. Very close. So it's 112, 116 twice and 115, 113 once. I thought that's about right. I thought Parker did edge it, but I thought Takam made a good showing of himself. He then went and had a fight with Anthony Joshua a few fights later, wound up getting KO'd and then KO'd by Derek Chisora. Fast forward 4 fights, and now we have him against Joe Joyce. Now, I'll be frank with you guys. Takam, at 41 years old, or 40 years old, is finding himself in a similar position that Povetkin did. And that position is one of not being a young man anymore. He has a lot of wear and tear. I do not give him much of a chance here. The only question is, does Joe Joyce get him out of there? And I believe he does. I believe Takam has become more stationary as he's gotten older. He was never particularly a mover, but he's gotten more stationary. He's been prone to getting knocked out. And if you look at the odds right now, you have Takam at plus 600 and Joe Joyce is minus 1,000. Now that seems wide enough that you may want to put money on Carlos Takam just to see, but I don't think there's any chance for an upset here. And so the over-under is the over 8.5 at minus 105 and the under 8.5 at minus 115. I kind of like the under over there. I do kind of like the under because you're just not getting, like, Joe Joyce by KO is at minus 240, which is what I think happens here. I think Joe Joyce gets him out of there. And I think if you're going to take a play here, if you want to take a play on this fight, you have to go with the under 8.5. Under 8.5 at minus 115. That's almost even money. That means you got to bet 115 and get 100. So that's almost even money. That's the play I like here if you're going to make any play. I just think Takam is too old. He's too small. He's 6'1.5" to Joyce is 6'6". I think those plays are going to come straight up the middle. I can't see Takam lasting a long time over here. I like Joe Joyce by knockout. By knockout, baby. That's it. So where would Joe Joyce go from here if he beats Carlos Takam? Well, I think you have to push him into a title shot. You know, the champs are locked up at least for the next, I want to say, half a year at least. You have the postponement. Speaking of, this weekend was supposed to be the Tyson Fury Wilder fight, but now we're gonna get that in October. So let's say Joe Joyce wins here, is gonna sit until October 3 months. If there's a clear victor there, let's say Fury goes out and stops Wilder again easily, or you're gonna get the Fury versus Joshua, assuming Joshua gets past Usyk. That's gonna be another 4 months away from there. So Joyce is gonna be sitting until early summer of the following year if he waits for a title shot, which means he's gonna have to fight around with contenders. Now, depending on how Wilder or Fury look like in this third fight, let's say Wilder loses, but a spirited effort, you could see a Joyce versus Wilder. There's a Dillian White still sitting around, but you see with Dillian, he's very suspect. And Joe Joyce is getting older. I mean, it's one of those things where, unfortunately for Joe Joyce, he can't afford to wait another 8 months. He really can't. He's got to stay active. He just waited 8 months between the Dubois fight and here, but this one is understandable. That Dubois fight was a legit fight. It was, like I said, 2 up-and-comers, even though Joyce is old, but 2 up-and-comers, 2 kind of new guys, and that's the kind of fights you want to put your guys in when you really want to test them. And Joyce, like I said, passed the test with flying covers because Dubois recently came back and knocked out Bogdan, I think, right? That was his name, in like 2 rounds. We all made money on that fight, I think. It was easy to predict. So, like I said, Joe Joyce is unfortunately stuck in a little bit of a predicament. If he can get the fights between now and his potential title shot in the summer of next year, then you're looking at least 1 more fight. It's going to probably be either Wilder or White. That's my guess, assuming Wilder loses. It could be Fury. But I think if Fury really gets knocked out, he's done with the sport. So, I mean, we'll figure that out as we go along. Let me check on that Garcia fight. No, still not. We still have some people I don't know who are in there. So, who else do we have this weekend? We have a couple of prospects. Well, we have one real prospect, and Isaiah Steen, fighting on Friday, actually, tomorrow. He's 15-0 with 12 knockouts. Young kid, 24 years old, fighting out of Cleveland, Ohio. and he's fighting against Henderson. Calvin Henderson is 14-0, 1 draw, 10 knockouts. He's 31 years old, is orthodox fighter, 6 foot tall, and this is a super middleweight fight. So super middleweight, like I love this division. I love this division. Anytime, like I'll be honest, I am biased to the heavier divisions. I like my middleweights and up. I really like those because when you get really below 130, for me, it's I don't really care. The guys are too small. But like once you get to the middleweight, super middleweight, light heavyweight, like that, those are my favorite divisions. Of course, I like welterweight. That seems to be the most talented division in boxing. But it seems like welterweight and middleweight, right there, those two divisions usually have the best pound for pound talents. And again, with super middleweight, this division right now is hot simply because Canelo, Golovkin's around, and the Charlos are right here. Up at light heavyweight, we have some action. Like it's nice. This is a good time to be in this division. It's a good time to be in boxing, as I keep saying right now. I love this sport right now. So again, I haven't seen Isaiah Steen, nor have I definitely haven't seen Calvin Henderson, but I've read about Isaiah Steen before, and I kind of am excited to see him. Like I said, I like seeing prospects. I like watching Friday night or Thursday night or Wednesday night fights where you have these lesser known fighters. Because you could find a gem in there. It's always fun. It's always fun to see a young kid. And like I said, Isaiah is 24 years old, so it's going to be kind of interesting. Nice step up for both guys, actually. Now, we have some news. Terence Crawford has been ordered to fight Sean Porter for his next fight. Now, that's really not the worst fight for Terence Crawford. It could be a literal coup. Now, do I like what's his name, Sean Porter's chances in this fight? I don't know. So Sean Porter has to, he's going to close the distance. He's going to make the fight ugly. That's what Sean Porter does. He sits on your chest. It's not very pleasant to watch if you're a viewer. And it will be interesting to see how Terence Crawford, now going into his mid-30s, is going to be dealing with Sean Porter. So I like this fight because, like I said, Spence is getting the big Pacquiao play. Regardless of whether you think he wins or lose, I have my money on Pacquiao. I think anytime you get something like plus 200 for Pacquiao, you almost always have to go with Pacquiao unless he's fighting like a light heavyweight or something. Like you just have to have that covered on Pacquiao. So again, we'll see what the odds are like with Porter Crawford. Again, I think Crawford is probably one of the most talented fighters in the game. He just has a paltry resume, and unfortunately, I believe it's already too late for him in his career to really kind of make a name for himself. Even if you look at fighters with slightly, let's say, resumes with things left to be desired, like an Andre Ward, simply because he could have accumulated more wins. By the time he was already emerged as a pound for pound fighter, he had already had massive wins simply by winning the Super Six and beating Chad Dawson. He didn't really need a Kovalev. The Kovalev just stamps it and makes sure that Andre Ward is a first ballot, unquestionable Hall of Famer. Terence Crawford does not have remotely anything near those wins. He doesn't have a Froch level win. He doesn't have a Kessler level win. Not really. He doesn't have certainly not a Kovalev level win, which, no Chad Dawson level wins. So this is like you take what you can get if you're Crawford. And the Sean Porter fight, while not an excellent fight, that's not the fight that I would want him in. It's better than nothing. Porter is a top 10 guy. He is a former world champ. He is a rugged fighter. He is a pretty good fighter, no, unquestionably. He's not a prime Timothy Bradley, but he is a good fighter. So, I kind of actually look forward to seeing him. We have some news that Bivol is in advanced negotiation to fight Ramirez at light heavyweight. Ooh, now that's a fight right there. Because remember, I really underestimated Ramirez in the previous fight. He really, really, really got Barrera out of there quickly. Lost money on that fight. I underestimated him. I think he was drained at 168. Maybe I was wrong because he had like poor performances at 168, especially his last one. So here he is against Bivol. Now, what I saw, just quickly thinking off the top of my head, what I saw with Bivol and with Ramirez in his last fight, I think I probably favor Ramirez here. Bivol has to box flawlessly. He's undersized at light heavyweight. This is 100% the case. You can see it even as far back as his fight against Joe Smith Jr. He is just undersized at light heavyweight. He is a super middleweight and maybe can even come down to middleweight. He really is. Don't look at his height. Look at his frame. Look at what in his previous fight. He won, but there were points he started towards the end of the fight started to wilt a little bit. And if you're Bivol against Ramirez, you start wilting, Ramirez will stop you, as he clearly showed. He very much carried his power up to light heavyweight. Again, I'd have to look at it some more and figure it out. But my first instinct is to say that Bivol's in a little bit of trouble here. Not because he's bad, but because it seems that Ramirez is better at light heavyweight than I thought. What else do we have talking about here? Now there's a little bit of a chatter in regards to Logan Paul versus Badou Jack. Watch Logan Paul take that fight and win that fight. Like I said, I haven't really been impressed with Badou Jack. He's a very stationary guy, doesn't pack too much power. Depending on what, it's almost impossible to take someone who was a former champ and say that, like, oh, Logan Paul's going to beat him. But Badou Jack is on the wrong side of 30. And Logan Paul, almost by definition, has to get better every time he's out, right? And even standing in there with Mayweather, like, kind of some of that greatness rubs off. Yeah. This is one of those transient greatness moments. It's going to rub off a little bit on you just by being in the ring with him. So watch that happen and watch Logan Paul win. I wouldn't even be all that surprised. So also, it looks like De La Hoya is actually going to fight in a professional fight against Victor Belfort. First, it was going to be an exhibition. Now it's a professional fight. From what I remember, Victor Belfort in MMA was a sizable guy. He fought somewhere close to like 190 pounds. De La Hoya's ass better be careful because unlike Floyd Mayweather, we've seen De La Hoya fat for many years. And that'll cause long-term damage to you in terms of your athletic conditioning. Yeah, sure, De La Hoya can get into shape. He'll probably look great. But it's going to be a little bit different against the fighter. Like, Belfort was very obviously juiced to the gills for, like, decades, right? I think he even got caught juicing. But you just look at his physique. This guy was absolutely juiced. Clearly one of those meatheads who's always in the gym, always working out. I don't know about this fight for De La Hoya because, like I said, Belfort, he stays in the gym. He's a gym rat. He hasn't been out of shape for as long as De La Hoya. And regardless of how great De La Hoya was in his prime, he was great against much smaller guys. And you saw even with Mayweather against Logan Paul, there were size issues. So we'll see. And finally, we have the 50-year-old Firat Arslan fighting in Germany. Now, Firat Arslan has been around for so long that his first fight was in 1997. He was a legit contender in the late mid-2000s and the early 2010s for the likes of Marco Huck, Alexander Alexiev. This was a legit, Johan Pablo Hernandez. He was a legit contender, a legit fighter. And here he is at 50 years old, still fighting. It's still getting sanctioned to fight, which is just crazy for the WBA to sanction this fight. This is a 50-year-old man. But, with the advances in technology, in nutrition, in recovery, in drugs, ladies and gentlemen, let's be honest here, in drugs, you have 50-year-olds that can still fight a little bit. Look at Bernard Hopkins. He was kicking everyone's ass until Kovalev really put a nail. Well, actually, Joe Smith Jr. really ended it. But before Kovalev finally beat his ass, he was kicking everybody's butt. So I think you're going to see some of these fighters. I think right now even Klitschko can come back and really put the hurt on some of these people. And Klitschko's in his mid-40s now, easily. So, I want to congratulate Arslan to be able to come in the ring at 50. Most guys at 50 they're just happy to come home after work and drink some beer and just hang out. But Arslan is fighting his, it looks to be his like 61st fight. Oh, Mo. Yeah, 61st fight. He's got 48 wins, 9 losses, 3 draws. That's 60 fights. This is going to be his 61st. I want to just congratulate him just on the longevity aspect of this fight. Now, it looks like the main card is about to begin in Russia, and you're about to get Gassiev in there. And I'm going to watch it, but I'm going to sign out here, guys, because I don't think I'm able to commentate or call the fight. I think that's I don't think that's legal. Maybe it is. I don't know, but I'm not going to do that for you guys. I'm sorry. So we'll talk about these weekend's fights on a Sunday or on a Monday after they're done. Enjoy your weekend. It's over.
I'm going to go home and break my wife's hip.
Don't brag about taking my side piece. Don't brag about taking my side piece, though.
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
And he's strong man, good boy, just.